Welcome to Real People, Real Matters. This is Diana Tulchinsky with my guest, Piotr Antonow.
Hello.
Hi, Peter. I
Hi,
just
Diana.
visited you at the Village of Glenview Chamber of Commerce a demonstration in the Park Center just a couple of months ago.
Was it fun?
It was very interesting.
So what did you like about
I like the
show?
portraitures a lot. I like the human design, how you designed it very quickly.
Yeah, so there was a aspect of measuring, there was like a little scientific aspect of the deal where human face had to be kind of laid out and put in proportions and all that before it all started.
And I met your lovely wife who does the demonstrations too. The figurative drawing was amazing.
Thank you.
Tell me some of your earlier life, who inspired you to do so much drawing in the earlier age.
Well, I went to the art school, so we were made draw, but it was a lot of fun. We had about 20 hours every week of art subjects. We had 2 times 4 hours of painting, which was painting and drawing, of course, and then we had 2 times 4 hours of composition, and we had 4 hours of sculpture, and on top of it, there would be already 20 hours, and we also had a couple hours of art history. That's all per week. So the school it was a high school level school, so they added another year to for the general subjects as well.
Is there any one of your parents or your brother that inspired you, or a sibling, or anyone that inspired you to go to this rigorous high school?
My both parents are professional artists, or were. The mom is retired. My dad is no longer around. But yeah, so there was it was a fun household to grow up in. My father always had projects around, and my mom had artistic jobs of various sorts, ranging from designing clothing, jewelry.
Mm-hmm.
She even had a job as a designer in a doll factory.
Wow,
Like
that was interesting.
Folk
Yeah.
dressed dolls. They were made for tourists, and she got to design those folk dresses.
Amazing. Are you the youngest or the oldest in your family?
I am the oldest out of 2. The older.
Okay. So how about your grandparents? Did they influence you when you were a minor, or?
No, my grandparents were regular grandparents.
Oh, okay.
Nothing artistic about them. They were nice people.
Mm-hmm. When did you visit America first?
I came for a vacation in '84,
Mm-hmm.
and came to stay 2 years later in '86. So interestingly, I was a little overwhelmed on the first visit, and I didn't like what I saw. I thought everything was. I was a teenager, kind of British teenager, and I thought everything was too commercialized. Everything was sold and bought, and when I went back, I started realizing that I have to do something with myself, and there was not that much opportunity. Plus, I thought that climate in Chicago was gorgeous. It was nice and warm, and beautiful lake and all that, and I just couldn't get Chicago out of my head once I went back. Which Poland is a little gloomy, and it gets colder, and even in the summer. So, by comparison, Chicago was like
Oh, that's wonderful.
paradisic.
Paradisic, yes, it is. Did you practice a lot of English in Poland, or was it a college level course?
No, I had classes in high school, but they weren't too useful. It was a huge shock because at the time when I was studying English in Poland, Poland was a very enclosed country. It was totalitarian, and they wouldn't let people in or out that much. So the teachers were also Polish. They didn't have contact with real English speakers, and I couldn't understand a word of what people were saying in the natural language. It was a big shock because I thought I learned some English, but it was not true. The person opened their mouth in the airport trying to explain something to me, and I was like, what are they saying?
Wow.
It just sounded like a bunch of words, but didn't seem to connect.
Back then, was there having like political disbalance between the countries and the Europe? Back then, it was hard.
Yeah, well, I kind of caught a tail end of communism, which was more funny than nasty. It was not that much, as from my standpoint, there wasn't that much of a real danger. I guess people suffered. Also, people got killed probably, but it was very. It was much less of it than could have been in the Stalin era, for example. They were kind of dying system and a little desperate, but didn't muster courage to like lodge a war on the nation. They were just kind of afraid for their own.
Was there a draft for Poland?
At the time, there was, yes. So you had to either go to college or you were drafted to the army. So I actually, when I started planning to go to the United States, I enlisted myself in college for a year, which was a very nice experience. I went to any college that would take me because
any college.
Yeah, because I was planning on leaving anyway, but I had to stay a student in order to not go to the army, which was 2-year compulsory, no fun.
No, yeah.
I guess they give you good exercise, but.
Yeah. Did you like want to become a designer when you're in high school, or is there any like an architect or anything like that?
No, I was in there was an art school and there was a lot of fun. I thought I'd be doing this. So.
What inspired you to do so much figure drawing and portraiture that it brings you today?
Well, that's accidental. A lot of my life is accidental in a way. So because I was going to all these various classes, wherever I could find a class, I would sign up, and some classes were in the Chicago Art Institute. Majority was in Evanston Art Center, and I thought that I would take figure classes because painting figures for the painter is like a language. So if you want to be good at anything, you start with a figure because those are your elements. This is how we look at the world. You kind of go in the context of a human figure.
When you came to the United States, though, was there anyone that motivated you to change from construction or daily maintenance jobs or mundane jobs to more artistic avenue?
I think the person who made me do this was my wife, who basically sent me back to school because she didn't want me to go nuts. So it was, I think some of the aspects of the construction business was the intensity, the amount of time that you would spend on it, and deadlines of various sorts. It was. She noticed that it was heavy on me sometimes at times, and she sent me back to the art school to basically reconnect with what I used to be doing, what I used to do, and to relax a little bit, I guess.
So
it did the trick.
Meditation, yeah.
Right, art meditation, that's right.
How'd you like the Evanston Center and the Art Institute?
Oh, I like them very much. They used to have a building on the lake, which was just gorgeous, old mansion building, which was completely unfit for the art center, but they did their best. They had great classes in there, and now they moved to the new building, which is very much like my communist school that I went to. So big glass windows, nice clean rooms, and all that.
How demanding is to have a portraiture business, especially in Chicago and the United States, with all these different contemporary artists?
Well, I don't do a lot, so I'm relieved of that pressure. I don't have to produce many portraits, a month or a year or something like that. But it's more of a pleasure. You get a lot of interaction with your subjects, if you will. People. You want to maybe let yourself go with the flow and see what the what your client or what your subject is going to bring to the table. So, for example, I if I paint a couple, I would let those people, decide on how they want to interact together, how they want to sit together, in what degree they're going to be dressed or undressed. So it's personalities come out. People usually do it for a reason. People want to see themselves portrayed, and it's like it's a way of getting a selfie.
Oh, so that's selfie,
like if you have a camera, maybe you photograph yourself through a filter, and your face becomes yellow or patterned or something like that sometimes, and it's sort of a similar idea when you order a portrait. Then you're curious to figure out how is it gonna come on the other end. So somebody sees you and they produce an image of you, and how is it gonna look? And what I do is fun. It has a lot of color to it, and it's exaggerated. It's over the top.
Oh, the exaggerated features of the hand.
So I often get people involved in. I was doing a portrait of this couple, and took us 7 weeks of sittings once a week. We had an appointment once a week, and they were very involved in specific artistic details. They would, and even though they're not related to art world themselves, the suggestions that they made would be really sensible. They would increase the kind of artistic value of what we were doing. So they would go into like, okay, so this shadow makes my hand look like it's continuing off of her shoulder or something like that. So maybe we should like tone it down. It totally makes sense, made sense.
Is this psychological? Because I understand Lucian Freud was a big inspiration to you when you were young.
I love Lucian Freud, yes, but I cannot really claim any inspiration because he's very different. He does, but I just love how he paints people, and he has his subjects have great psychological aspect to them, but I think he is not meaning that. I think he just paints. He just looks at what he sees and just puts the paint down. And it happens to be the same thing with me, that I'm not ever spending any time trying to put any psychology into those faces or figures. And in some way, for some reason, they do turn out to be pretty psychologically loaded.
Yeah. So. Tell me about symbolism. Like, I understand there's a Polish artist that use, I think, Malchowski did the first one, Malchowski, of historical symbols. But tell me, how does that relate to you in your life?
I don't think there is that much of a relation between me and Malchowski. He's just used to be. He's a historical painter. He's from early 20th century. It's just that he's a wonderful painter, and if you're supposed to learn painting technique, this is the first guy to go to. It's just unbelievable power of technical ability that he has, and those are the paintings you can look at for hours, and every minute you'll find something new. And so this is how he did this. That's a neat trick. Let's rip it off. Let's borrow from that.
How's your style changed from when you started beginning to right now? Is there anything more of an American modern feel, or do you want to go into the classical?
I hope so.
You hope so.
I hope there is more American modern feel to it. I think I've loosened up with color and form. I used to paint more tighter, and I'm working on a color relations. I'm spending much more time looking for specific colors, and I do change do make changes to the whole areas of paintings a lot. I would even tape a section of paper to the whole section of the painting in order to make those changes without affecting what's there. And when I decided that, okay, this is how I want to go, then I'll take the paper out and repaint that final decision on the actual painting.
Like I see in some of John Kernan's work, it's more like the feminist, like the pink rosy type of feel. Is there any like reflections on that, or is it just too contemporary for your style?
No, I love John Curran. He's wonderful, and him and Joanna Krobak, they have a connection. I don't think they know each other, or they may have not ever seen the work, but there's a connection in the type of work that they do. It's got this kind of medieval type of traditional painting craft in it, and there's also this humor aspect where Curran has a lot of humor in his paintings, and it's difficult to define. It's difficult to say what exactly is humoristic about it, but he deforms the figure to a certain degree, and he adopts that medieval mannerism.
Tell me the medium you usually draw in or have your business in: portrait, oils, or acrylics, or pastels?
Well, normally I would do, drawings, the figure drawings I would do in charcoal, and paintings, especially portrait, I would typically do in acrylic or oil. And then there was, of course, this one time when I came to studio and I was in a big hurry, didn't bring my paints with me, and a friend has lent me some pastels, and these were actually a type of crayon that kind of worked like a pastel, which was lovely. And I did this one figure in the pastels, and since I started doing many more pastel figure drawings and painting, faces, large scale faces. So this is the whole entire different area of the medium that I haven't used before, and it worked very nicely.
Are oils and acrylics generally more forgiving than pastels, or?
Yes, ma'am. Because with acrylics, especially, you can overlay, and you can make a lot of changes. So they're good for this, and pastels are they have more immediacy, and generally when you put a stronger line or stronger color, it's not easy to go over it with entirely different colors. So with pastels you have to start planning early. So maybe you go with the more weaker colors, and then you go into stronger. You kind of build your painting into more and more stronger colors.
For oils and for acrylics, how important is the color mixing, or is that prevalent in your artwork?
Well, very important. You don't want your colors out of the tube. You want to study those colors, and color is a huge part of the composition. You can compose your figures, your elements of the painting beautifully, and the color will not work, and the whole thing will not work. So it's difficult to divide your painting into like a shape composition and color composition. They kind of go along with one another.
And is there like a brush set that you prefer or you won't work with? I mean, is there the antique brush set that's important to the artist as a tool?
Well, I'll say this: I'm using brushes too much. I should be using some more creative. Artists used back of a brush to scrape things. They used palettes, knives, and all that. And I don't do too much of it. I'm kind of stuck with the brushes too much. So that's my resolution to go into a little bit more diverse tools in the future.
Please tell me the day that you demonstrated at the Art League in Glenview at the Park Center.
Well, that was fun. I do it sometimes. It kind of started this year with Elmhurst. art league, I believe, or art guild. And I was invited to do a portrait demonstration, a public portrait demonstration. So what it was that people came, there was an audience, and I was standing there and creating a large, portrait of in this case it was my wife's served as a model, and it was great. It was gave me an opportunity to confront what I do with people reaction and see how it flows, and the reaction was very positive, thankfully, and there was a lot of smart questions, and also it got me thinking about how am I doing it. I mean, does it make sense? Does not, is this constructive? Is it not? So yeah, that was pretty awesome.
How do you draw the crowd to get clients, or is there any technique, or is it basically word of mouth?
Yeah, I don't advertise formally. I don't place the ad in the paper or radio or anything like that. It's kind of going with the flow in my case, because I would get invited by somebody. I would maybe go to put my work in a show, and from there somebody would approach me during the show and ask if I would, either do a portrait or if I would have a demo.
How did you advertise your book, though, your self-published book?
Oh, I did not. It's something that I just printed several copies to have something to show to my portrait clients, and the idea is that I put on the page a portrait and a photograph of a person who was being portrayed, and you can see how the painting relates to the real person. Does it look like them? Is the personality there? Is there movement? So it's just a fun project.
So do you believe that the voice of the person comes out on paper, or the personality comes out after like an hour session, or does it take longer than that?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good question. There's no rules. There are no rules. I remember the time when I was doing a portrait of this wonderful gentleman who also is my client from the construction business. My company built Edition for him, and I wanted to give him a portrait as a thank you, and he was sitting for it, and for like 3 hours, even though I put all the elements of his face in, he had a right kind of nose, right kind of eyes, he didn't look like himself at all.
No.
And he was getting curious, and he was like, so how is it going? And I was like, oh, great, and I was really nervous about it. And during applying paint, adding, at some point suddenly I did something that made the whole thing click. Suddenly he started looking like himself in a millisecond, and I was like, oh wow, this is good. Whatever it was that I did, I didn't really realize what exactly did I change that made it work, and it started looking like him. And he uses his portrait for the Facebook.
Oh, Facebook. Okay. Tell me the happiest client that you've ever had for the portraiture.
They're all pretty happy, interestingly. So I don't know if there's happiest. My daughter may have been the happiest client, because she wanted to have a portrait done. She was a teenager at the time, so she was a little apprehensive about her looks. She wanted to look pretty in that portrait. She knows I don't do pretty, so she was like, should I have that portrait done or not? Because what if I look horrible? And she accepted, and sure enough, half of her face is yellow, half of her face is blue.
Oh, that's really original.
Yes, and she accepts this portrait. She likes it. So.
Oh, thank you for talking about such a lovely history about American European history, and especially in the Glenview Park District.
Thank you, Diana. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Peter. And this is Real People, Real Matters with Diana Tulchinsky.